Theo Greminger and I are back with bold predictions for Week 11 fantasy football as well as the rest of the season. You might think that the predictions we've had thus far in the season have been great, have been bold, have been sexy. You haven't seen anything yet. If you think we gave you sex appeal with our bold predictions in previous weeks, this week is the greatest week in the history of our bold predictions. I blushed. When Theo shared some of his bold predictions, I blushed, and then it made me have to go to another level. So we are building on each other. We are feeding off each other, and it is as bold as it's ever been. Theo, give us your first bold prediction.
It's so bold that we almost called this sexy predictions. That's just how sexy these predictions are. Audric Estime last week had his sort of semi-breakthrough game. This was the game where Estime really dominated the usage in the Denver backfield. It wasn't completely to himself, but we saw him get 14 carries, finished with 53 rushing yards, and this is a player that is capable of handling major volume. The Denver Broncos beat reporters and Sean Payton have sort of alluded to Audric Estime being a player that gets a significant role in the second half of the season for multiple weeks now. Denver plays the Falcons. The Falcons have allowed the 9th most rushing yards to opposing teams this year. They've been somewhat of a run funnel defense. And we're going to see Audric Estime rush for 125 yards this week. This is a player that will continue the trend that we've seen from guys like Tyrone Tracy, guys like Bucky Irving, where we've seen multiple hits from day 3 backs. And Matt, this is sort of the result of NFL teams sort of pushing down the running back position, where you're going to get multiple guys now starting to hit from day 3. Audric Estime will be one of them. There's a lot to like here. He's just turned 21 years old in September. This is a player who would have been a day 2 pick, but he ran a slower than expected 40 time. Mega producer at Notre Dame, actually had 18 rushing touchdowns last year at Notre Dame. That is a school record.
His best comparable player on Player Profiler is Jordan Howard. And you might think, oh, God, Jordan Howard never had 30 catches, also runs a 4.7 40. Well, in 2016, Jordan Howard put up 15-plus fantasy points per game. So even if you are between the tackles grinder, if you're on the right team that has a strong defense and a philosophy of wanting to run the ball, an old school coach, a graybeard coach, those kinds of running backs have great touchdown equity and the ability to be running back ones in fantasy football. It's not common. It's not typical for, one of these grinder backs in PPR leagues to be this good, but Audric Estime is set up in the perfect situation in Denver. And speaking of Denver and their defense, Patrick Surtain is a problem. He's a problem for opposing wide receivers. He's going to be a big problem. Big problem for Drake London. Drake London has always struggled to separate. That's his one weakness, is against the best cover corners, the true shadow corners. He does have difficulty separating, and he's going to have a big problem with Patrick Surtain. Kirk Cousins likes to see who's open and throw where the ball needs to go. Likes to find his windows and go to those windows. He doesn't much care the name on the back of the jersey. So I think this is the week he's going to look more for Kyle Pitts, going to get a lot of Bijan Robinson out of the backfield. Unfortunately, because this defense is so ferocious, not only will Drake London put up a bagel, 0 fantasy points in Week 11 for Drake London, Kirk Cousins is also going to get hurt. That's another problem with Kirk Cousins. Being such a statue back there, that lack of mobility makes him more injury prone. He's going to get hurt. He's going to miss the rest of the season. It's going to be the Michael Penix show in the second half and for the rest of the season. And he's going to be so good at the helm of that Atlanta offense. He's going to lead Atlanta to the playoffs. And next year, he will be the second 2024 quarterback off the board. It's going to be Jaden Daniels, will be the first quarterback drafted from that class, this past rookie class. And then Michael Penix is going to be drafted ahead of Caleb Williams, ahead of Drake May in 2025.
I mean, that's bold. Matt is giving you injury predictions. He's giving you a shutdown prediction. I mean, that's like a whole show. I mean, cut it. We don't have anything else, but we do have something else. And I'm going to stay. Matt gave you sort of a very depressing prediction if you're a Kirk Cousins manager. He says this is the last game you're going to get to enjoy him all season long. And
it's the last game of his career. He'll never play again.
Never play again. Never play again. Just truly awful that the Podfather is dropping injury prediction. Let us know in the chat if Matt should be doing that or not.
There's going to be an ambulance on the field. There'll be reports of a hospitalization. There will be speculation that he'll never be able to walk again. Right? They're gonna interview his wife in tears.
No, not happening, Matt. Not happening. Kirk Cousins is going to be perfectly fine, everyone.
None of that's happening. None of that's happening. But there will be some kind of minor injury that for a quarterback is very difficult to play through, like a broken finger. That's what we're talking about.
There we go. Well, I'm going to go with a depressing prediction fantasy-wise. Not an injury prediction, but more of a usage prediction, more of a fantasy scoring prediction. And it's one that I don't really like to make because I have a ton of this player on my Dynasty rosters, but I'm going to say that Breece Hall does not finish as a top 10 running back rest of the season. There are some writing on the wall here. This is a player where whenever you make a negative prediction towards Breece Hall, people get very, very angry because this is a naturally gifted player, has been one of the better players for fantasy football for multiple seasons, a guy who led all running backs in receptions last year. Matt, anytime you kind of close your eyes and think about Breece Hall, it's him running for like a 50-yard touchdown or a 50-yard catch and run, a truly explosive player. But we have seen Garrett Wilson and we have seen Davante Adams both targeted heavily. And I think that's where Aaron Rodgers is focused, is getting his wide receivers the ball. And I think that is going to hurt Breece Hall. And people will point out some of the spike weeks that Breece Hall has had, multiple 20-point weeks over the last 7. But if you take a look at the other games and you ignore sort of the spike weeks, you have 5 out of his last 7 games where he's had 12.3 points or fewer in PPR. And Matt, there's something going on with Breece Hall in terms of his juke rate. One of the best stats we have at Player Profiler that you're available to you to go check out is juke rate. And this is a player who continually was forcing missed tackles early in his career. He was number 1 among all running backs in 2022 in juke rate. He was 5th in juke rate in 2023. Matt, he's 44th in juke rate in 2024. Something is going on with Breece Hall. He's not quite as explosive. He's not quite as elusive. And Aaron Rodgers is not going to force feed him the ball as much as we saw with the Jets last year, where their offense was just hyper-targeting Breece Hall and hyper-targeting Garrett Wilson. The Davante Adams addition is going to hurt Breece Hall. Breece Hall finishes somewhere between RB11 and RB14 for the rest of the season. Will not be a top 10 running back scorer for the rest of the season. But he'll stay healthy.
Evaded tackles per touch, juke rate on playerprofiler.com. It doesn't lie. People lie. Stats don't lie. Evan Engram is the truth. Evan Engram is in the perfect situation now. Brian Thomas played last week, but Brian Thomas is not 100%. No one that's watching Brian Thomas play thinks this is Brian Thomas. This is not Brian Thomas. This chest injury is holding him back. He's playing through limitations. No Christian Kirk. The one healthy option that Mac Jones can trust, and Mac Jones is the type of quarterback that looks for his tight end. And that's Evan Engram. Evan Engram going to put up 10-plus targets. He is going to be the tight end 1 in fantasy, the lead scoring tight end in fantasy football in Week 11. He's a guy you have to get in your lineups and have to play in DFS, pick'em games, whatever it is, go over on Evan Engram, due primarily to the law of the conservation of targets and the fact that you want to chase garbage time. And this is going to be the trashiest garbage time we've ever seen. If we look at the game total and the line, Jacksonville goes to Detroit, and Detroit gives up top 5 in fantasy points allowed to tight ends. They're 14-point favorites in Detroit. So this is going to be garbage time. And who is going to benefit most? Evan Engram.
Yeah, I love it. I think Evan Engram is set up for a very big week and a big week moving forward. He is a true target earner at the tight end position. And for me, I'm going to stick at the tight end position, but I'm not going for the week. I'm actually going for the season. And my prediction is Brock Bowers is going to finish as the tight end 1 overall in fantasy scoring. He's going to catch George Kittle, and he is going to stay there at number 1. And this is a kind of a double prediction here because it's a Brock Bowers is going to score exceptionally well. And that's not really a bold prediction. Brock Bowers has been fantastic, but he's actually had 15.5 or more PPR points in 4 out of his last 5 weeks. So not only has he been very productive, but he's been very, very consistent. And he is going to catch George Kittle because I think George Kittle is in a slight issue with Christian McCaffrey and Juwan Jennings both returning. George Kittle is your tight end 1 overall. He's been truly fantastic. But George Kittle this past week tied for his season low in terms of targets, and he only had 3 catches, which was also a season low. He was bailed out by a touchdown. And I think when you ask people how George Kittle did this past week, they'd say he did great. He scored this awesome-looking touchdown. But at the end of the day, targets went to Christian McCaffrey, targets went to Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall even had 6 targets, and Christian McCaffrey is fully back. George Kittle is going to fade, and Brock Bowers is going to give us a rookie tight end, finishing as the tight end 1 overall for the 2nd consecutive season.
Rookie tight ends. I mean, who doesn't love a good rookie tight end? So I'm with you there, buddy. I'm with you. I love Brock Bowers as well. I also love George Pickens. This is the classic don't overthink this one, right? We love to overthink in fantasy football. This is the situation that you cannot overlook and you cannot overthink. Ja'Marr Chase goes for over 50 fantasy points last week against who? The Ravens. Who do the Ravens play this week? The Steelers. Who is the Ja'Marr Chase of the Pittsburgh Steelers? It is George Pickens, except that George Pickens is even more explosive. On Player Profiler, we have EPX, explosive play rating. Who do you think is number 1 among NFL wide receivers in explosive play rating? George Pickens. Who's going to get all the targets? Who's getting all the air yards in Pittsburgh? George Pickens. So George Pickens will be the wide receiver 1 this week. And even better, he's going to tow Russell Wilson along with him. So the Wilson Pickens stacks in DFS are going to smash. It's going to win the DK Milly Maker. And good news, FastDraft. The FastDraft app just launched DFS. You pick 6 players and play DFS every week. And in these FastDraft drafts, they take about 5 minutes. You just do 5 drafts in 5 minutes. That's the beauty of FastDraft. Both the first 2 drafts that happened this week on FastDraft, George Pickens was not drafted in the top 10 in either draft, which I think is a mistake. And that means he is going to win people money both on DraftKings and then FanDuel, but then also FastDraft.
I love your prediction. And Russell Wilson has just been fantastic. He was in my top 10 this week on our waiver wire column over at Player Profiler. You can read that one. Russell Wilson, Matt, has been QB6 overall since he took over in points per game. So this is a player playing very well. And last week here on Bold Predictions, I predicted George Pickens would be a wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. So I love seeing you on this spike week. I think it's going to happen. And a little bonus prediction, I think George Pickens is going to outscore CeeDee Lamb for the rest of the season. That's an off the cuff, not even on the show sheet, Matt. George Pickens is going to outscore CeeDee Lamb for the rest of the season. My prediction, not that bold. Kind of bold. It depends on which way you're looking at it.
Wait. This we told the audience that this was just going to be a big sex fest. This is going to be the boldest of bold predictions. How could you possibly, at this point, start to backpedal on this.
Okay, so I think this is for me. I think this is bold because this player just came back, and this player just rushed for 39 yards only.
Okay.
But Christian McCaffrey is going to finish as the RB1 overall for the rest of the season. Matt, we talked about this off the air last week about how I thought that they would ramp him up kind of slowly, and they were going to give guys like Jordan Mason, give guys like Isaac Guerendo. Matt, am I pronouncing Guerendo correctly? How do you pronounce Guerendo?
Guerendo.
Okay, so I mispronounced it. Thank you, Matt, for setting the record straight. But I was expecting those other two running backs to make a little bit more of a dent. Not only did he dominate the running back carries, the second leading rusher was actually Brock Purdy. So he completely nuked Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason was fantastic to start the year, but he completely nuked him. And Isaac Guerendo had only one carry as well. So both those guys are non-factors. So McCaffrey has all of the rushing attempts down. Those completely go to him. And Matt, just in Christian McCaffrey style, he gets 7 targets. He catches 6 of them, 68 receiving yards, did not score a touchdown, and still played fantastic. Rest of the season, this is the running back you want. And Matt, it creates a very interesting dichotomy because a lot of the teams with Christian McCaffrey were sort of dead to rights or treading water. So you're going to see a lot of 5 seeds, a lot of 6 seeds, those Christian McCaffrey teams that were able to survive, that drafted well throughout the rest of their draft. You're going to see in leagues this year, the number 1 seed is not safe because Christian McCaffrey might put a 30-pointer up every single week in the fantasy football playoffs with this sort of usage.
So let me get this straight. Your bold prediction is that the guy that scored 21 touchdowns last year and 24.5 fantasy points per game is going to be the lead fantasy producer this year.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, it's bold.
Wow,
I know.
Theo.
I know,
Wow.
Matt. I know, Matt. It's bold.
Oh, wow. Whoa. I mean, my hair just got blown back. Woo. Woo, baby. Yeah, we really so we teased it, right? We teased super ultra mega hyper bold predictions, and then you gave us Christian McCaffrey will be good. Thanks, Theo. That's good. That's great. No, it's great. I'm sure that this video is going to do really well on YouTube. Everyone, if you like this, like it. If you think I'm wrong and you like Theo's analysis, like the video on YouTube, subscribe to it. You should be doing that. Please do it. The Bears are 5.5-point dogs this week. And it's a must-win game, and they are going to win this game. This is a which is dead win for the Bears this week that I'm predicting against the Packers. No Shane Waldron. That is going to somehow unlock the offense. Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze is going to erupt for 100-plus yards, specifically because Jaire Alexander is not 100%. And like we've seen, talked about Brian Thomas last week, Deebo Samuel has a history of this. These players, they play through these injuries, but they're just not right. They're just clearly not operating at 100%. That's going to give Rome Odunze the opening that he needs. Also, DJ Moore checked himself out of the game last week. Keenan Allen's dust. Who's left? It's all about Rome Odunze and the Bears shocking the NFL, coming back and winning, making Shane Waldron look even more foolish than people already think he is.
The Bears winning a game this week and against the Packers, that really makes up for my Christian McCaffrey non-bold call. But Matt, I'm going to go with a very bold one. The Dallas Cowboys this year went full Moneyball at the running back position. After years and years of maybe overvaluing the position, they said, you know what? We're okay. We're not going to draft any running back. In fact, we're going to go with Rico Dowdle, and we're going to go with Zeke Elliott off the street as our running backs this year. And we'll be okay because analytics are telling us that we'll be all right.
And we can always bring in Dalvin Cook.
And we can always sign Dalvin Cook off the street as well. This is a franchise that, you know, that bothered Jerry Jones like immensely. Behind the scenes, he's like, these guys are wrong, but I'm going to let them do it because we want to appear like we're doing things the correct way. We don't want to throw money at one of these guys, you know, like doing something crazy, like throwing money at Derrick Henry or drafting a guy like Tyrone Tracy in the 4th round. Like, we're going to not do that this year, even though you know Jerry Jones wanted to do it.
Yeah, you don't want to poach an all-purpose back from a team in your division like Saquon Barkley. You don't want to do that.
Why would you do something crazy like that?
No.
So multiple running backs that would have potentially fallen in their lap, they did not sign. Instead, they signed Zeke Elliott and Rico Dowdle. And the season has fallen off of the rails. This is a 3-win football team. Obviously, it is not only because of the lack of options at running back, but with an old school thinker like Jerry Jones, a lot of it sort of is. And he's the kind of guy where a great running back can remedy a lot of bad situations, sort of old school football thinking. Now the Dallas Cowboys are currently projected to draft 11th overall. And Matt, I would go ahead and say, based on the way that Cooper Rush and Trey Lance looked last week, that they're going to be drafting even earlier than 11 overall. So let's just say they're picking inside of the top 10. They are going to select Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State inside of the top 10 overall. And Ashton Jeanty will be a top 2 running back off the board in 2025 redraft. He will be a first-round pick next year in redraft. This is a immensely talented running back, and this is a player where this draft class does not have a whole lot of quarterback talent. Ashton Jeanty is number 6 overall in Dane Brugler's first top 50 that he released at The Athletic this week. Brugler is usually pretty on point when it comes to this sort of evaluation. So Jeanty is a guy who's going to be a first-round pick regardless of whether Dallas selects him, but Dallas is going to overdraft him somewhere inside of the top 10. They are going to end up getting a terrific running back who has 1,734 rushing yards and 23 touchdowns right now through 9 games played. And Matt, to even amplify this even more, Boise State is going to be in the college football playoff this year. So the entire nation is going to see Ashton Jeanty have one, possibly more games on a national stage. Everything is sort of piling up for Ashton Jeanty to have a Bijan Robinson-like hype heading into the NFL draft, and his draft capital will be very similar to Bijan, and he's going to be drafted even higher than Bijan was in redraft. Ashton Jeanty, a 2025 first-round pick in the NFL draft and in this thing of ours.
Oh, yeah. So fantasy gamers, they love a good Cowboys running back. If there is a good Cowboys running back available, there just hasn't been one in a little while. How about them Cowboys? You love to hear it. You love to hear it. Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, he loves Cajun food. We know that. He loves New Orleans cooking. We know that, right? He's going home to New Orleans. That's where he played for a bunch of years, and he had some big games with the Saints, if you remember correctly. I'm sure he's going to much prefer to play there in the dome on the turf than in Cleveland with all that wind and all that weather, right? It makes for more efficient offenses. When you see teams playing in that dome in particular, they tend to put up numbers. And I can see the Browns heading to New Orleans. This team is heading in the wrong direction. Both teams are trying to lose games. And it makes for the perfect environment for actually scoring fantasy points. So I think that Jameis Winston, he's going to go put up a top 5 fantasy week this week. He's going to go off for 400 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. We're going to see a quarterback throw 5 interceptions and win the game in consecutive weeks. And it's only ever happened twice before. Jared Goff did it last week. Only Tony Romo and Matt Ryan had ever done it in the NFL. And we're going to have 2 quarterbacks do it in consecutive weeks. And that quarterback is going to be Jameis Winston. Get him in your fantasy lineups. Stream him this week. Play him in DFS. Let's go.